now we are going to change the atmosphere. Till now we spoke about architecture, and from now on I want to tell you a story. It's not an easy story, but I'll try to make it easier for you. On Saturday, I will speak of another part of my story, because my story begins in Florence in 1584. But this is not my intention today. Today I'm going to speak about the time of the Holocaust. On Friday, I will tell you the story from before the beginning of my family in this city, not now. I was born in Florence in 1937, so you can make your account how many years I'm here on this earth. And I was a small kid when my father received the mission to be the rabbi of this city of Florence. It was a very important community, Jewish community. He was a doctor, ophthalmologist doctor, and he worked here in the hospital of Florence with Professor Bardelli, and at some moment the life became more and more difficult. In the end of 1943, the German entered Florence. Till then, there was fascism, there was Mussolini, and he was not so kind to Jews, but he was acceptable, if you can say. At the beginning, even more than that, he sustained the Zionistic idea. That happened before. In 1943, the German entered Florence. And at that moment, my father was called to be the rabbi of the city, a young rabbi, a young doctor, a physician. He was a very good physician, very appreciated. He wrote a lot of articles about medicine, and he was called to become the rabbi, and it was the right person, the right place. One day, we were living in Via Colletta. You know where the Florentine perhaps knows where is Via Colletta. Via Colletta is near the synagogue, and but we were not praying in the great synagogue, but in two small synagogues that were before very close to the ghetto. The ancient ghetto that was destroyed in 1871. And these small synagogues were not so new synagogues, interesting synagogues. I dealt with them in the future when I was an architect. But before, I was coming to synagogue every Saturday night and every Saturday morning with my father. I remember walking to arrive to the synagogues, and passing, after Via Colletta, we lived in Viale dei Mille, and we were walking because on Shabbat, on Saturday, we cannot go by car, we have to go by foot, and I remember passing through this great palazzi in Florence. I, a kid of 3-4 years old, walking and seeing this enormous bugnato with enormous tubes, stones, And I was saying, why I have to go through these stones? It's terrible. It's so annoying. It's terrible. But every Shabbat I was going to the synagogue with him. I remember coming to the synagogue that you will see perhaps on Friday, and he was giving sermons from the pulpit. And I remember him doing it. I was a small kid, but I remember very well his presence. And one day, when we still lived in Via Colletta, my father called my mother and said to her, you know that I am slaughtering the hens and the goats for the community because they have to receive kosher food. Kosher food is a diet the Jews are observing, to eat things in a way, and the slaughtering the beasts and the hens was done in a certain way, not as normal in the how do you say, the Gentile society. And once he called my mother and he said to her, hey, we didn't understand what is it. Come, I will explain you how to slaughter a hen, because perhaps I will not be there and someone have to slaughter the hens for the community. And me and my sister were very curious to see what this thing is. And then we were hiding under a tree and looking at him. And then he called us, he saw us. David and Shoshana, come to me. I want to show you what slaughtering means. It's terrible for me seeing cutting the throat of a hen. And then the blood fall on the earth and he covered it. And he says, you know, we say that even the hens have a neshama, a soul, and we have, and the blood is part of the soul. So we have to cover it, to separate it, to the creation of God, and we have to observe it. We have to eat the animals, but God gave it to us, but we have to respect Him when we slaughter. And we understood such things, very, very strange for us, a kid of 4 or 5 years. And then he continued to work in the hospital, and one day the government said that every Jew that is working for the state have to finish working for the state. He have no place in our state. So he was in the hospital, and he was working as a surgeon in the ophthalmologist department. And the professors that worked with him said, Professor Bardelli, what I will do if you are going? You know what? You don't have to make the surgery. Stay with me and look at me, and if I need something, you will help me. And so it happened that one day the surgery was not going as the Professor Bardelli intended to be, and he said, in Italian naturally, al diavolo le leggi razziali, vieni qua Cassuto, aiutami in questa operazione. To the diavolo.
Hell, to hell with the...
Yeah, hell with the laws, with the racial laws, come and help me in this operation. And my father went to help him, and then afterwards, Professor Bardelli said it's too dangerous that you are here. I will do without you. I cannot hold you here. And then he began to, with a bicycle, because the rabbis at that time didn't have a limousine, here they have a bicycle. And on the bicycle he went from one house to the other and said to the people of his community, leave Florence immediately, because it's a great danger be with the Germans. And some of them said, we have some medals that we received in the First World War, and we were very appreciated in the army, so no one will do to us nothing. These were the persons that were the first to be caught and to be sent to East, to Poland. But many of them left Jerusalem, Florence, and they were saved later on. And he continued to go from one family to the other. In the meanwhile, he told us, I have to put you in some monastery, in a convento, so that I will not be all the time with the thought what is happening to my family. So we entered the monastery. We entered the monastery, and we were there with my mother, my sister, my brother, and later on a small sister was born, and we were four, and my aunt, the sister of my father, was with us with two kids, and we were there. And we changed our names. Suddenly, my mother said, you know, you are not David anymore, you are Giorgio. From that moment on, you are Giorgio. And they said, then I went, and she called me Giorgio. I didn't return. And they said, David, I returned. I said, you see, I called Giorgio, and you are not responding well. You remember, you are Giorgio. So, once we were eating in the refectory, and they brought to us a great omelette of blood. And this is a normal dish in normal families. And I looked at a black omelette. What's that? And someone in the table said, this is an omelette of blood. And I was very angry, and I said to my mother, my father said that the blood. And she looked at me. She wanted to kill me. She said, yes, I remember that you were against eating blood, but here you have to eat everything, but I permit you not to eat it. So I thought I almost gave up my family to I don't have to speak like that. What I have done. I was very ashamed of myself. And then my father continued his work, and he worked with the Cardinal Elia dalla Costa in Florence, with other priests in Florence and other Jews. There was a underground that worked to make things easier for people that have to evacuate, to disappear. One of the people that helped him very much was a corridor of bicycle. His name was Gino Bartali. And he was with him. And he was bringing documents from one side of Florence to another. And he received, in the last year, received the honoration of being
righteous of the righteous.
Writers in the people of the people. He was a very important connection with the church, with people that were preparing false documents. And one day, a person arrived from Belgium, and he had money. And in that moment, money was very important. He had to help a lot of people arriving all over the Europe to Florence. They thought that the war was finished at that time. So they arrived people from Belgium, from Holland, from Germany, as they thought arriving to Florence to be saved, but it wasn't like that. So he needed money to help these people to disappear in monasteries, in churches, with the help of the local church. And one day, the person that arrived from Belgium with much money had an interpreter. The interpreter was called Marco Ischio. He was the interpreter because this person from Belgium didn't know Italian. So Marco Ischio was a spy of the Germans. And he told the Germans that the group of the underground was meeting in via I don't remember the name, in Florence, and the Nazis, the SS entered this session and caught every one of them. The church, people of the church, my father with them. Then my mother heard about it. She searched to find a way of someone to bribe and receive and liberate my father. And she had an appointment in Piazza Signoria, and she came with the money to bribe the person. And when she was there, she was caught too. And in this moment, she was also under arrest. She was in Villa Triste, and she was, she never told that she is really the wife of the rabbi, but they are not tortured her. They tortured her, and she didn't say a word. But on one day, they told her, you know that Rabbi Nathan Cassuto is departing tomorrow for Auschwitz, for the West. At that moment, she knew that she had to tell the real story, and she said, I am his wife, I want to go with him. And she and my father went in the convoy that arrived to that was sent to Auschwitz. Meanwhile, I left the convent because my mother, when she saw that we are in danger, she took us somewhere to go somewhere. She didn't know where. She was going with a chariot, a small chariot with a small baby, and my sister of 7 years old was holding my brother of 3 years old, of 2 years old, and I was holding the chariot. I remember it very well, and you walk and walk and walk and walk. I even cannot complain about the buñatos that was around, because I felt the danger. In a moment, my mother found a abandoned cinema, and she said, let's be here. It was evening, and we slept in the cinema. We did whatever we could, and she left me with my sister, and she tried to find another place for us for the day after. And then she found a place day after, we were in a manicomio, בית חולים לחולי רוח. She found a place, and I was there for 2 nights, and I remember the sick person crying, and I was so much afraid. This was a sick people place, and I didn't know what to do. I was so much frightened. But after 2 days, they found a better place. And they found a place. I was sent to a family, a Christian family, my brother to another Christian family, my cousin to another Christian family. For the boys, it was difficult because we cannot be in a community that can see that we are circumcised, and we were in families. My sister was in a convent, in a monastery, and my cousin also in the same monastery, so we were spread all over Florence. I was in the Familia Colzi here in Jerusalem. They lived in some Gian Battista Fagioli, number 33. I remember the place.
What was the name of the family?
מה?
המשפחה. איך קראו למשפחה?
קולצי.
קולצי?
קולצי. קולצי. And they hold me. And I played with their kid. Their kid was of my age, and we were very good friends. But I felt that my parents betrayed me. Why they left? I knew that there were problems, but why I don't see my mother? Why I don't see my father? And one day, I saw the lady. I called her Aunt Anna, like my mother. My mother was Anna too. And the hand that we were playing with and taking the eggs that she was giving, suddenly she became old, and they decided to kill her for making something to eat. And she took the hand between her knees, and she take the neck, and she killed her like that. And then she go and continued to starnazzare, I don't know how to say. And then she died. And I saw it, and I was so upset. This is not the way to kill hands. I know, I tell myself. And I decided not to eat anymore. I finished my eating. And the lady called my grandmother. She found a way to be in contact with her, and she said, the child is not eating, and if he is not eating, we cannot be responsible of him. So she came, my grandmother, and called me in another room, and she said, not Giorgio, she said me, David, you have to eat everything. I said, but you don't know how they kill the hands. Father told me that it's not right. And she said, oh, that's the problem. Now I understand. I will meet your father and ask him what you have to do. My father at that moment was just going to Auschwitz. But she said like that. And she told me, David, after 2 days she returned. And she said, I spoke with your father, and he said that you have to eat everything that they put in front of you. This is now the most important thing. I was very frustrated, and I asked her, even pork? And my grandmother said, no, pork you don't have to eat. No one has pork at that time. But she understood that I have to come down from the tree that I was on. So I found the way. Don't eat pork. From that moment, I was free from observing the way of slaughtering the hens. We were going every Monday every Sunday to the church. I was not used. I was on Saturday going to synagogue. It was very boring, but I was going. I mean, now the church, two street near to us, very easy. And I was going to the church and I was praying. I learned to pray on my knees and making my hands like that. And when I was doing that, I was saying my prayer. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That was my feeling that I was doing what is right for a small Jew child. And then one day I told the other kid, I have an idea. I said, what is the idea? We are using colors, powder colors. We have red and you have blue. You take the blue, I take the red. And we put it in the holy water, in the entrance of the church. Terrible. Today I will not do it at all. But that time we put that, and then we waited outside. And we saw people coming out with all colored, blue and red. And we laughed a lot. But the priest, Don Poli, said to me, came out, Giorgio, you have done it. And I said, yes, I was. I even didn't told him about the other, Piero. You did it. Yeah. So from this day on, you do not come anymore to the church. What could I do? So it was not easy. It was remaining alone at home with, they were speaking a lot of the diavolo. The diavolo will take you, the diavolo. So I saw the diavolo everywhere. I was so frightened to be alone. Ma? Ken? So I will try to make it shorter. And we arrived. I was going every day to learn in there was no school at the time. It's the school of Don Poli. And Don Poli told me, he was speaking about all the saints and all the things, and also ABC and also elementary mathematics. So I was going before the war with my father to see museums in Firenze. Even then, there were a lot of museums. And we are going to the churches to see the paintings on the wall. So I knew a lot about the saints, so when I was with Don Poli at school, he was telling about the saints, and I was asking him bad questions, because I knew about the saints a lot, what my father told me. So he understood that I was a troublemaker. And he said to me, Giorgio, you like very much figs, tenim. Yes. So, you know, Assunta in the kitchen, Assunta was the lady that helped him, in the kitchen is peeling the figs. If you want to help her to go and peel the figs for us. And I said, I'm very happy. And so every day I was going to peel the figs, and I was so happy about it. And I was eating naturally. And I returned to it. I returned to it many years ago, some 15 years ago. I come to visit my friend Piero, and I asked him, what about Don Poli? And he said, oh, he is responsible of the Opera del Duomo in Florence. He's a very important person. I said, let us go and meet him. You cannot do it. You have to take an appointment. So I arrived. I decided to go anyhow with Piero. And we arrived to the nun that was sitting there. And we said, I want to see Don Poli. And she said, Don Poli? Monsignor Poli. What do you think? It's Don Poli? What's that? And I said, okay, Monsignor Poli, can I enter? No, you have to take an appointment in 2 weeks. And I was parting the day after. So I said to her, I have no time. And she says, impossible. I saw a door close to her. I imagined that Don Poli was on the other side. So I ran to the door, opened the door, and she was running after me. And I asked him, Monsignor Poli, have I to go to the kitchen to help Assunta to peel the figs? And he looked at me, and he embraced me. And he said, that's you, Giorgio. Oh, what's the story? And I sit with him for an entire hour and told him my story after the war. He knew everything. He knew that I was a Jew. He was very smart and very intelligent. And he was so happy to see me later on that I was alive. We have no time, so I will continue my story. Yeah. So my father was sent to Auschwitz, as I told you. He was, as I told you, an ophthalmologist. And I found later on he didn't return anymore from the camps. But I found a person that told me that was in Auschwitz at the same time that my father was there. And I asked him, can you tell me if you met my father? And he said, what was his name? I told him, Nathan. And he said, oh, I knew an ophthalmologist his name was Nathan. And how do you know? How do you find him? How it happened? He said one day, a capo were the people that were responsible of the blocks, gave me a smash on the face, and my spectacles fall on the floor and get broken. And they were very, very difficult to find something that can change them. And the capo said to me, if tomorrow you don't come with new spectacles, tomorrow you are going in the chimney. It means you are going to the crematorium. And someone told him, I know an ophthalmologist in your block, in the near block, ask him. And he went to Nathan, to my father. And my father told him, at night we will go, there are some enormous quantity of spectacles that were taken from the Jews. We'll try to find a solution for you. And that's what happened. He found a lot of combination to create. He told him what kind of spectacle he need, and he prepared two spectacles for him. And he returned the day later to the capo with new spectacles. He was saved. I found him, and he asked me, what about your father? He said he never returned. Another time I enter with one of my kids, the eldest kid on my hands, to a bank. and I spoke to the clerk there, and he asked, he saw my name, Cassuto. Any relation to whom? My grandfather was a very renowned exegete of the Bible. And he said, no. Nathan Cassuto, you know him? I said, it was my father. He came out of the bank, took me by the arm, like very, very strong, and took me out. You are the son of Nathan Cassuto. I was a very good friend of him. I was a kid. I was help of the chief of the Lazaret, and I was a kid, and I was smashing his shoes all the time. He loved me very much, and once I saw a person that was in the recovered in the hospital in the Lazaret, and he has a problem. A great stone fall on his leg, and they told him, if you don't recover, you will go to the crematory. And he was recovering, and he found my father, and he told him, he saw that this man was taking his portion of bread of that day, and every day they were receiving 200 grams of bread, and taking the bread and putting it under the mattress, and he said it's something crazy, because everyone would come and stole from you. And he looked at this man, he was doing like that. The evening arrived. See, the evening arrived, and my father took out this piece of bread and said a benediction, and he said, "Today is Shabbat. Good Shabbat," to the boy, and he gave him half of his bread. And he said to me, from that day on, I didn't leave him alone, never. And I was with him all the time. I was with him also during the march of the death. And I know the day that he was killed. So I knew from that moment the day of the death of my father. We have to close. I'll tell you about my mother on the day of, on Friday.
Yeah.
And this is another story, a story of the independence of Israel. And this, I believe that is a good occasion to continue the story. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.